I am Tamar Ishalom, and this is Jewish Crossroads. Moments of deep crisis sometimes push certain people into the spotlight, people who until then weren't widely known, but suddenly, in the midst of disaster, emerge as powerful voices. Dr. Mijal Bitton is one of them. Just 3 weeks after October 7th, as antisemitism surged across the United States, her sharp and moving speech at a spontaneous rally near NYU went viral.
Shame on all those people who cannot say anti-Semitism, who cannot speak about Jews being victims, who say all life matters when it is our lives that are on the line. Shame on all those people who dare tear down posters of mothers, of grandmothers, of babies. Have they no shame? Have they no shame? Shame on anybody who thinks they can mention a context for murder and for terror against Jews. There is no context in the world that should ever be uttered in light of terror.
Later, she also spoke at the large rally against anti-Semitism in Washington, D.C.
This is our calling. Our time is now. Our work is urgent. So let us fight with everything we have, with our voices, with our feet, with our votes, with our prayers. Let us fight together against hatred and for life.
Dr. Bitton is a scholar of contemporary American Jewish identity, a community leader, and a public intellectual. She serves as a senior fellow at the Maimonides Fund and is Rosh Kehillah of the downtown Minyan in Manhattan. She earned her doctorate from NYU and has been recognized as one of the few leading voices in American Jewish thought who brings a deeply unique personal perspective as a Latina Sephardic Orthodox woman. She is co-host of a weekly podcast called Wondering Jews and has a weekly newsletter applying Jewish wisdom to our times. Dr. Mijal Bitton, I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with where we are now. We've just witnessed 2 horrific terror attacks targeting Jews, one at the museum in Washington, the other in Boulder, Colorado. Where does this moment leave the American Jewish community?
Yeah, so it's so raw, you know. We have to both analyze and also we are living through this, right, as American Jews. And I think it would be an understatement to say American Jews are scared right now. And I think we're really just trying to understand where we are in Jewish history a little bit. I keep looking at different Facebook conversations, Instagram comments, and there's people who are going back to different moments in history and saying, where are we? Are we, in Germany in the 1930s? Are we in Spain, the golden age of Spain and then like the collapse of it? Are we in America in the 1920s when it wasn't great for Jews? We had some rough decades, but then things stabilized. So I think that American Jews, we are both emotionally grappling with a lot of fear and feeling alone and lonely, and also still trying to diagnose where are we right now.
The goal of terror is revenge and violence, but nevertheless, it's also fear to make American Jews feel unsafe, to stop showing up at rallies or Jewish events. And that fear is completely understandable. How do we confront it?
Tamar, it's so interesting. Throughout Shavuot, I kept thinking about this, partially because I used to be part of a weekly march in Washington Square Park and Union Square, raising awareness for the hostages. Because of my own childcare issues, it's been hard to go in the last few months. But I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, would I go back with my children? Because I used to walk with my children holding hostage posters and walking in some of the most prominent centers of pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas activism in Manhattan. And then I just kept thinking that in many ways, American Jews, we are becoming Israeli, right? We are living with the same questions that Israelis had to confront and face do I go out not just to a demonstration, but do I go out to a restaurant, right? Do I go to a club? Do I go to certain areas when there is real fear because of widespread terrorism? And here I actually believe that we have to take notes from Israeli Jews for what it's meant to live for many years under the fear of terror. And Israeli Jews didn't just survive it. Like in terms of different polls showing happiness and joy and really investment in life, there's something there that I think we really, really have to learn from. And we have to do this not only for the sake of American Jews, but I would say for the sake of America.
This brings me to my next question about the connection between Israel and American Jewry. Do you think Israel should also consider, among its many national priorities, how the war affects Jewish communities around the world? I mean, in other words, more broadly, what is the extent of Israel's responsibility towards the diaspora these days?
Yeah, that's such a big question that I think many of us are thinking about. A friend of mine who's an important Jewish leader, Sheila Katz, she had an op-ed in the New York Times just today or yesterday after the terrorist attack in Colorado. And I believe the first headline was American Jews are paying the price for the Gaza war.
I saw that.
Right.
And then
it was
changed.
It was changed to American Jews are scared, something like that.
Yeah.
But that first headline is powerful because I think it has many meanings. One of them is an accusation to individuals and telling them, how dare you target your fellow citizens for a war very far away. But there's a second meaning there that we can read into that headline, which is to say that the Israeli government is identified with the Jewish people and that the actions that it does in Israel has consequences on the safety of Jews around the world. I do believe that we need to have a conversation right now across the ocean. Jews, whether in Israel, in America, in other countries, as you know, I'm not a Israeli or American in terms of where I was born, I'm Argentinian, but there is no doubt, like I don't think anyone can cast a doubt about the empirical statement that what's happening in Israel is affecting Jews around the world. Now, we can have their debates about how much that should play into different government decisions, but I would say as a staunch Zionist, as someone who loves Israel, who prays for Israel, who has family fighting in Israel, I do wish that it was a greater part of the conversation in Israel about like how different, it's not just different decisions, but are you investing in explaining why you're doing different things? Are you investing in public relations? Are you speaking in a way that takes into account that Jews are living, all around the world? I don't see enough consciousness of that. At least as somebody who reads the news, I don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Do you think Israelis are less interested or open in what's happening to American Jews than vice versa?
Well, first of all, I think there's like a translation gap, right? You're in different countries. So there's a very natural lack of understanding. Now, this reminds me, Tamar, I visited Israel. It was like a few months after October 7th. And I remember having this surreal experience of going near the border of Gaza. I was with a group and visiting soldiers. We did one of those like barbecues where you feed reservists and soldiers. And I had this funny moment in which I kept interacting with young men wearing their uniform and with guns. And I would tell them, I'm an NYU, whatever. And they would be like, oh my gosh, I heard you guys have it really bad. And I'm like,
are you safe?
Yeah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're literally here with a gun, actually going into fighting with terrorists. And so I don't necessarily think it's a lack of care. I think it's a lack of knowledge and understanding and perspective about what it means that you have, what it means when you're citizens of a country, and in many ways you have to contend with rising antisemitism in a way that you don't have to contend with in Israel, like at least from your fellow Jewish neighbor. So I think for most it's lack of consciousness. I don't know. What do you think?
I think Israelis are very preoccupied with their problems and with the war, but even beforehand, we're very concentrated on ourselves. I think from what I'm experiencing here, American Jews are more interested in the conversation than Israeli Jews. But I think there is a positive change since October 7th, because I think Israelis were overwhelmed by the support of American Jewry.
Yeah, and I do wonder, I do think that there are some parts in Israeli society, or even like a subconscious element, that basically says, we are here, we are besieged by actual physical enemies. We're sending our people to war. And so if you have to put up with some level of discomfort or anti-Semitism around the world because of what we're doing here, it's part of the deal. And I understand that argument. I just wish we would talk about it. I wish there was more, like I would have understanding for the argument that says we are looking at different calculus of what's happening in the world, and we are deciding the following because of the well-being of the Jewish people, begadol broadly. But we're not having those conversations. And I really think we need to have them.
Let's talk about a different kind of conversation, a local one here in New York. When you watch your speech at NYU now, nearly 2 years later, what do you think about what we've been through as a community since, and about what you understood then compared to what you understand or know or feel now?
It's hard for me, by the way, to watch that speech. I hear myself raw, so almost like bleeding. And I think that exemplifies the place that so many of us Jews around the world, that intense, primal, not logical, but like primal pain that is very hard to kind of explain rationally with like Western standards of, of explaining who we are in the world. I actually think that October 7th, in terms of American Jews, it revealed certain muscles of Jewish peoplehood and identity that much of the leadership of American Jews had thought had become extinct. And it revealed that they were there in a way that are incredibly potent and powerful. And in many ways, they have continued to be exercised. I'll give you an example. A week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, I was invited by a young woman that I'm close with to come and speak to a group of Jewish students who were just graduating from the social work master's program at Columbia University, who chose to have a second ceremony to celebrate their graduation as Jewish students. So they went to the big one, and then they had their own. And I was absolutely moved by that experience, because that school was one of the worst kind of like anti-Semitic,
tough place.
Awful experiences, including like physical harassment and all of these things. And even that day, their big graduation, they were still like, pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas, again, it's hard to draw a line, kind of like protest at the actual graduation. And then for me to go there and meet the students who, when they went into the program, they did not think they were going as Jews. And then they go through this. And they literally marched in the big graduation wearing like a big sign saying Jewish graduate with like a blue Magen David.
Wow.
And then they have their own ceremony in which you can feel the pathos and the emotion and the feelings of pride and love for each other. And that is something absolutely unbelievable. I don't want to be Pollyannish and say, it's everywhere and it's getting stronger. No, but there is a group of Jews that these last 2 years has changed in a way that is irrevocable, and that is going to give us a different type of leadership for the future.
You wrote a beautiful article about Jewish peoplehood right after October 7th. Talk to me a bit about it.
Yeah, it's so funny, Tamar, because you write a lot of articles and you kind of never know which one will actually, become, go viral, if you want to call it like that. And I don't think a week goes by that I don't hear from multiple people from around the world who tell me that they keep going back to that article, because I think that article gave language. It's almost like you feel something in your body and you feel something change in you and you don't know what to call it. So that article gave language to tell, I think it's important to name it. In America, religion is based on like a Protestant model, that has to do with like, inner faith and identity, and not so much with like bonds towards people you don't know or that you might not agree with. So when you feel that sort of pain after October 7th, part of the challenge after being in America for so many generations and decades, it's like actually not understanding, like, what is this? What am I supposed to do with it? And like, is this normal? So the article that I wrote used traditional Jewish sources and teachings to say this is what it means to be a Jew, right? What it means to be a Jew is that we have a covenant with each other, and that when some of us are hurt or targeted because we are Jewish, we are supposed to feel pain. And that is actually, it's almost like a reminder that the system is working. And if we wouldn't feel that pain, then the system wouldn't be working. And actually, we couldn't speak about the Jewish people anymore. So that article has kept coming back for people in different ways. Like someone sent it to me, like when the two young staffers at the Israeli embassy, Sarah and Yaron, were murdered. And they're like, I keep thinking about this. And I kept thinking, Sarah was Jewish. Yaron wasn't, Jewish, even though he was part of a Jewish community. And they were both part to me of the story of Jewish peoplehood and what it means to feel pain when some of us are hurt, even if we don't know them.
When I speak about peoplehood, I always think about it that in Hebrew, first of all, I think for decades we didn't have a name for that. And today it's called amiyut yehudit, which is an invented phrase. I must apologize. I don't think it's a good one, although I'm sure that whoever invented it looked for the best term. And I wonder, is it symbolic, that it's a term that I think that 95, if not 98% of Israelis, you will tell them amiyut yehudit, which is the translation to peoplehood, Jewish peoplehood, they won't understand what you're talking about.
Well, part of that is because the term peoplehood is invented itself, right? I spoke at JFNA earlier this year and I spoke about this. I asked people, raise your hand if you know how to translate Jewish peoplehood to another language. And it's like, we don't know because it was actually invented by American Jews. American Jews needed, I'm going to simplify it a little bit here. Noam Pianko, wrote about this. But American Jews needed to find a way to explain this sense of feeling a connection with other Jews. And they needed to explain this in an American context where that didn't make sense. And they needed to find kind of language that would also stay away from elements that would feel uncomfortable to liberal Americans. So Jewish peoplehood was a term that was almost ambiguous enough that it allowed Jews to say, we have a connection to each other, but it was soft enough that you could say it and it's like, it sounds nice. I don't know what it really means.
It's an open tent.
It's open. It's not threatening. And I think that's actually an important history because part of what my argument has been is that we, in too many cases, have leaned into this soft, ambiguous sense of Jewish peoplehood. And I think we need to reclaim the much more kind of potent, primal. To me, the best translation of peoplehood is mishpacha, is family.
I might be too harsh with Israelis because they do understand Am Yisrael Chai, Okay, right. So we don't know Amiyut Yehudit, but we feel the Am Yisrael Chai.
Yeah, but they don't know it because it's a recent Hebrew invention for a recent, American invention of a... But the history is important because, and to me, it's been important to, I spoke about Jewish peoplehood last week in Toronto, and it was important for me to actually say we need to understand the cultural forces in North America that has made this difficult, right? Because if we're going to reclaim it as the source, what I believe is the source of resilience and strength, then we need to acknowledge the forces that have made it difficult because we are called to be countercultural right now.
Dan Siner, in his famous recent speech, made an interesting point. I mean, he said October 7th and October 8th sparked a burst of energy among Jews, reconnecting to their identity and to Israel, but that a burst of energy can fade. It doesn't have to translate itself to something that's sustainable. So how do we turn that renewed connection and energy into something lasting?
Yeah, so the good news is that, there's been survey data that has shown that there's still significant energy. So JFNA last year commissioned a study that showed, I'm not going to quote you the exact numbers, but roughly around 40% of American Jews, wanted to be more involved and more engaged post-October 7th. And the numbers have decreased slightly, but they're still fairly significant, nearly 2 years out. But 100%, I do agree that, the emotional response to October 7th can fade. I actually go back a lot to one of my late teachers, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs is a household name. right? In terms of his influence on world Jewry. And I would say in general, he's known around the West in such important ways, his contributions. People don't often know his biography. He credits the post-1967 kind of like time, because 1967 is the war, the Six-Day War. Many historians have pointed to that year as also bringing up, a surge of energy in Jews around the world in terms of their commitments towards Israel and towards Judaism. And Rabbi Sachs speaks about those years as the ones that actually woke him up, right? So I guess the reason that I've been thinking a lot about Rabbi Sachs is that I'm not sure that every single person who was moved by the Six-Day War changed their life completely. But if you have a core group of Jews, right, who do become like post-October 7th, like versions of Rabbi Sachs, that itself can be monumental.
Across denominations.
Across denominations. I don't think it's helpful to be obsessed with numbers and say like, okay, what, But it is really, really important to encourage new leadership and leadership that comes from different places and is able to really shake things up and think in new ways.
You wrote beautifully about, pain as a manifestation of care. But I wonder, does Jewish solidarity always require pain or trauma? Can we build a shared sense of peoplehood without victimhood? How do we do that?
Yeah, it's so funny, Tamar. I get this question a lot. And a lot of people are like, well, obviously we don't want a Jewish people based on pain. And I'm like, actually, I don't know. And the reason I say actually I don't know is that I think a lot about the family as a metaphor, okay? And I think a lot about the way that we learn to be humans in family. I'm speaking in general. And I think if you were to speak to people about moments in which they felt a special and powerful bond with their family members, very often it's around difficulties, right? Like I think for myself, there were moments in my own family where we had an illness or some very difficult trauma. And I can look back at those moments and say, we learned that we were there for each other in a very powerful way that no happy moment can recreate. So a different way of saying this is that I think that in the same way that all families will face struggles and trauma, so like that's unavoidable. It's unavoidable that we are going to face struggle and trauma. But those moments end up becoming a kind of like, they shape us in ways that are incredibly powerful. So I don't see it as a bad thing because I think challenge and trauma, and in this case, persecution, will happen. Like I think they're unavoidable. And if we can actually go through those moments and emerge stronger, then we would have been, strong families who become resilient after they go through challenges. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's bad if we make our identity be only around that. And if we don't then do like the simchas, you know what I mean? Like the celebrations, like that would be bad. I don't think it's bad for that to be, pivotal identity shaping moments. I think it's human.
You bring a very unique perspective to this, Mishpuche. You're American. You lived as a child 2 years in Israel. You were born in Argentina. You're part of the American Jewish community, but also Sephardic, which is a minority within American Jewry, and you're Orthodox, which is another minority within the American Jewry. How does standing at this special intersection help you see the relationship between all of these communities within the family?
My parents raised me with a certain consciousness to be really, really proud of where I come from. So I was raised with a very proud Sephardic heritage, an intellectual, philosophical, religious kind of heritage. But they taught me that there's no question, it's unequivocal that we are part of a Jewish people. And it's almost like we get to bring our gifts and our differences for this greater collective. So there was no tension for me growing up. I think sometimes in America with like identity politics, like we see a lot of tensions between groups. And I was raised differently with very strong confidence about my own place that I come from, what I believe in, what I want to do, but feeling no contradiction with being part of the Jewish people. And right now I feel very grateful that I feel like I'm part of so many communities because I really do believe that this is part of the most important work that we have to do right now, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in the US. We are a tiny people. We face, enormous and terrifying challenges. And historically, our greatest strength has been when we've turned to each other and we've been able to be strong together. Yeah, and I do get frustrated when I think that we are too tribal and, we're cannibalizing each other too much.
As an Israeli, I often feel that it's easier for me to criticize my government than it is for many American Jews. In Israel, the political debate about the war is intense right now. Most Israelis want to end the war and bring back the hostages. There's weekly protests, petitions by artists and former security officials. And no one doubts that both sides are Zionists and both sides love Israel. But there is a big disagreement. And in contrast, I feel that for many American Jews, it's become harder since October 7th to hold a complex position, to say, yes, I'm Zionist, I support Israel, but I also feel I have a right to criticize certain decisions. Am I observing correctly?
Yes, but I think you're implying that the cause for that is that you would be identified as anti-Zionist or not Zionist enough. And for some people, that is the case, but I want to add another layer. Many of us, or I'll speak for myself, sitting here in America, we are incredibly, incredibly attuned to the way that Israel is demonized in a way that at this point, I don't believe can be explained with anything other than antisemitism. Just like the level of demonization, obsession, double standards. It's
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And I know that for me and for many friends of mine, it's almost like, okay, let's say that I want to criticize Israel and what the government is doing. But to do it in an environment where you know that your words are very likely to be used or strengthened, and
it will be weaponized.
100% weaponized. And it's like an anti-Semitic ecosystem that has made of Israel, like Rabbi Sachs used to say, Israel is like the Jew, right? That we were, historically in terms of anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism. So that is what is just so, so hard right now. It's like, how do you offer criticism? Because it is so important to be honest, right, about our positions and not to kind of like enter like binary thinking, all good or bad, right? So I continue to believe in the importance of that. But here, again, it's just so hard to do that when I'm walking down the street and know that hostage posters are torn down or that people accuse Israel of like blood libels in a way that is just unbelievable. So that to me is part of what makes it really hard to know that any criticism of Israel is either weaponized or can easily amplify that kind of anti-Semitic discourse, which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Yeah. I'm just saying it's part of like the
explanation,
the calculus of like, do I speak? What do I say? How do I say it? And I'll say for me also, like emotionally, it's like I have relatives fighting in the war. And I always, when I write, I imagine them reading what I write. And it's like, it's very hard.
Well, we've reached the final part of our conversation, the Jewish Crossroads questionnaire. 5 quick and fun questions. Are you ready, Mijal?
Oh, sure.
What's your earliest Jewish memory?
I don't even know when I distinguish between being Jewish and being a person. Everything was together. I mean it. It's like a philosophical statement for me. It was all tied together.
That's the most interesting answer I've received so far. If you could meet any Jewish figure from history, ancient or modern, who would it be and why?
I have loved reading about the life of Doña Gracia Méndez. She was a Jewish woman born, I believe, in the 16th century, or at least lived in the 16th century, lived as a secret Jew because of the Inquisition in Europe. And she's fascinating. What I love about her is that she was a woman, a secret Jew, a widow, very vulnerable, fabulously wealthy. And she spent her life kind of like outsmarting the Inquisition and protecting fellow Jews. And towards the end of her life, lived freely as a Jew in the Ottoman Empire. She's quite amazing.
What is your favorite or most meaningful Jewish tradition?
I really love giving my children a blessing on Friday nights. Yeah.
If you could jump 100 years into the future, what would you hope to see for the Jewish people?
Oh, big question. I mean, I would love, it's like I'm going into like my religious prayers right now. What do I pray for? I mean, I would love an Israel that is focused on building and not on war. And I think Jews around the world will be shaped differently as well.
I'm with you. What's one Jewish word? It could be in Hebrew, English, whatever, that feels particularly meaningful to you right now.
I mean, again, it's cliche, but tikva, kind of like hope, not as something that you have or don't have, but as something that you are committed to.
Dr. Mijal Bitton, it's been such a joy speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this episode of Jewish Crossroads. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to write to us at jewishcrossroadspod@gmail.com. Thank you to Tomer Atzabi Bar, who edited this chapter. We'll see you next time, same place, same journey, with a new voice. See you soon.